Emily had dreamed of this day for years. At 58, she finally felt ready to marry again. Life had been hard, losing her first husband, raising 2 children alone, but she never lost hope. When James proposed, she believed she had found her second chance at happiness. The wedding was everything she imagined, a small, elegant ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. The late afternoon sun cast a warm golden glow, and Emily's heart swelled as she walked down the aisle in her flowing white gown. James smiled at her like she was the only person in the world. His eyes sparkled with a mix of tenderness and promise. Emily felt safe, cherished, and hopeful. The guests clapped and cheered as they exchanged vows, but beneath the joy, there was a faint whisper of doubt in Emily's mind. It was so subtle she almost ignored it, a quiet feeling like a shadow crossing the sunlight. Something about James felt just a little off, but she told herself it was just nerves. After all, she was finally marrying the man she loved. The reception was filled with laughter, music, and warm embraces. Everyone seemed happy, yet Emily couldn't shake the small, unsettled feeling that lingered in her chest. James was attentive, but there were moments when his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. When he slipped away to take a phone call outside, Emily found herself watching him closely, wondering if her doubts were just her imagination. That night, after the guests had gone, Emily and James sat quietly in the living room of their new home. The room was soft and dimly lit. She reached for his hand, hoping to find comfort, but James pulled away slightly. His face was unreadable. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm fine," he said, but something in his tone didn't match his words. Emily nodded, deciding not to press further. She wanted to believe him. She had waited so long for this moment, and she wasn't ready to face disappointment. But the doubt, though still faint, grew inside her. The next morning, Emily woke to find James already gone. A note on the kitchen table said he had to handle some work matters. It was the first time he left without telling her directly, and it didn't sit well with her. The day stretched long and quiet, and Emily tried to focus on unpacking boxes and making the house feel like home. Yet, every time the phone rang or the door opened, her heart jumped, hoping it was James. Days passed, and James' behavior grew stranger. He was often distant and preoccupied. Sometimes, Emily caught him staring out the window as if lost in thought. He avoided sharing details about his day or making future plans. When she gently asked what was wrong, he would smile and say, "Nothing to worry about." But Emily knew better. Her years of life had taught her to listen to her instincts. Something was hiding beneath James' calm exterior, and it scared her. She remembered the whispered doubts she had pushed aside on her wedding day, and now they felt louder, harder to ignore. One afternoon, Emily went through some of the wedding photos on her phone. She smiled at the happy faces around her, but when she looked at James, she noticed something unusual in one picture, a man standing in the background, watching James closely. The man's eyes seemed sharp and calculating. Emily blinked, feeling a chill run down her spine. Who was he? Why was he watching James like that? That night, Emily tried to push the thought away, but it lingered. She decided she needed to learn more, not just about the man in the photo, but about James himself. She didn't want to be consumed by fear, but she couldn't ignore the growing unease. The perfect beginning she had hoped for was already unraveling, and Emily didn't know if she was ready for what was coming next. But deep down, she knew one thing for sure. She had to find the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Days slipped by, and Emily found herself sinking deeper into worry. James, the man she had trusted, was becoming a stranger. His once warm smiles had turned rare, replaced by a cold distance that left her feeling more alone in their shared home than she ever had been. She tried to hold onto the hope that it was just stress or exhaustion, but the silence between them grew heavier each day. One evening, Emily prepared a quiet dinner, hoping to bridge the growing gap. The table was set with care, soft candlelight flickered, and her favorite music played softly in the background. When James arrived, he barely glanced up from his phone. His voice was flat as he muttered, "I'm tired. I'll eat later." Emily's heart clenched. She wanted to ask what was wrong, but she held back. Instead, she forced a smile and sat down alone. The silence echoed louder than any words, and she realized just how far apart they had drifted in such a short time. The nights were worse. Emily lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of the house, waiting for any sound from James' room. Sometimes she heard the soft click of a door closing or the muffled noise of a phone call, whispered in shadows. When she asked about it, James shrugged her off with vague answers. Work stuff, nothing important. Her trust began to crack. She had spent so many years building her life carefully, and now everything felt like it was slipping through her fingers. The more James withdrew, the more Emily's fears grew. One afternoon, while James was out, Emily found herself wandering through their home, eyes lingering on small details she had never noticed before. A folder left on the kitchen counter, hastily shoved aside when he entered. A set of keys she didn't recognize hanging on a hook by the door. A voicemail she accidentally heard when his phone lit up on the table. A man's voice, harsh and urgent. Emily's stomach twisted. Was this what she had been afraid to see? A double life, secrets hidden beneath the surface? She wanted to believe in James, but the evidence was mounting. That night, Emily's mind raced with questions. Who was the other man on the phone? Why was James so secretive? Had she really married the man she thought she knew? Unable to bear the silence any longer, Emily reached out to a close friend from years ago. Someone who had always been honest with her. Over coffee, she shared her worries, her doubts, her pain. Her friend listened quietly, then said something Emily hadn't dared to say aloud. Sometimes, love isn't enough. You have to protect yourself too. Emily left the cafe feeling both comforted and terrified. Could it really be true? Was James hiding something worse than just stress? The thought gnawed at her. Days later, Emily noticed something else. James had started receiving mysterious text messages at odd hours. He would quickly hide the screen when she came near. One afternoon, Emily's curiosity got the better of her. She picked up James' phone just for a moment and saw a message from an unknown number. Don't forget what we agreed. No mistakes. Her hands trembled. What agreement? What mistake? Her mind raced through every possibility, none of them good. Emily confronted James gently that evening, her voice steady despite the storm inside. Is there something you need to tell me? James looked away, eyes clouded with guilt. I'm trying to protect you, he said finally. There are things from my past I can't change. But I deserve the truth, Emily said, her voice breaking. I deserve to know who I married. He sighed deeply and ran a hand through his hair. Not yet. I promise, when the time is right. But Emily couldn't wait. The silence was suffocating, and the shadows around James were growing darker every day. One night, alone and restless, Emily sat by the window, staring out into the quiet street. The doubts she had fought so hard to ignore now shouted inside her. She wasn't sure who James really was anymore. The man she had dreamed of spending her life with seemed lost behind a mask of secrets. She knew one thing. She couldn't keep living like this. If she wanted to find peace, she had to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. And deep inside, Emily feared the truth was closer than she dared imagine. At a charity gala, Emily reluctantly agreed to attend, hoping the night would offer a welcome distraction from the growing storm at home. The grand hall buzzed with soft conversations and clinking glasses. Elegant chandeliers cast a warm glow over the crowd. Emily, dressed in a simple but tasteful gown, moved through the room with a polite smile, though her mind was elsewhere. James had insisted she come alone. His excuse was a business emergency, but Emily couldn't shake the unease settled deep in her chest. She wandered toward the refreshments when a tall man with silver hair approached her. His presence was calm yet commanding, and his eyes held a sharp intelligence that immediately caught Emily's attention. "I'm Alexander," he said with a small, knowing smile. "I couldn't help but notice you seemed unsettled." His voice was gentle but carried a weight of experience. Emily hesitated before responding, but something about Alexander felt trustworthy. They talked quietly amid the hum of the event, and Alexander shared bits of his life, a billionaire who dedicated much of his fortune to uncovering fraud and deceit in high society. Emily found herself drawn to his honesty and the way he seemed to see right through her carefully constructed facade. Then, unexpectedly, Alexander mentioned James. "He's not the man you think he is," Alexander said, his tone grave. Emily's heart stopped. "How do you know him?" she whispered. Alexander hesitated, but met her eyes steadily. "I've been watching him for a while. There are things he's hiding. Dangerous things." The warning was clear. Emily's breath caught. Could this stranger really know something about her husband that she didn't? A chill ran through her, but she tried to steady herself. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve to know the truth before it's too late," Alexander replied. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, plain envelope. "This is everything I have on James. Don't open it here. Be careful." Emily took the envelope, her hands trembling slightly. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Before she could say more, Alexander slipped back into the crowd, disappearing as quietly as he had appeared. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Emily's mind replayed every word Alexander had said. Was James really living a lie? The man she had trusted with her heart and future was hiding a dangerous secret? When Emily finally returned home, the house was dark and silent. She held the envelope tightly in her hand, debating whether to open it immediately or wait until morning. The temptation was overwhelming, but she knew she needed time to prepare for whatever truth awaited inside. She sat at the kitchen table, heart pounding, staring at the envelope as if it might burst open on its own. Memories of their wedding day, James' distant smiles, the strange phone calls, everything collided in her mind. Her hands shook as she slowly peeled the envelope open. Inside were photos, letters, and documents. The photos showed James with different women, not just acquaintances, but families she never knew existed. Letters revealed debts and threats, secrets James had carefully hidden. Each page was a punch to Emily's heart. The man she thought she loved was a stranger with a tangled past. Tears welled up, blurring her vision. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run away. But more than anything, she wanted answers. Why had James lied? What else was he hiding? Suddenly, the front door clicked. James was home. Panic surged through Emily. She quickly gathered the papers, stuffing them back into the envelope. When James entered, he barely glanced at her, exhaustion weighing on his face. Emily steadied her voice and asked, "Who is he, James? Who are these people?" James froze, caught off guard. For the first time, there was no smooth answer, no deflection. His eyes darkened, and a long silence filled the room. Emily realized this was only the beginning. The secrets were deeper and darker than she ever imagined. And now, a stranger's warning had set her on a path she couldn't turn away from. Emily's hands trembled as she waited for James to speak, the envelope still clutched tightly on the table between them. The silence was suffocating, thick with a weight of unspoken truths. Finally, James looked up, his eyes dark and weary, and said, "There's so much you don't know, Emily. I wanted to protect you from all of it." "Protect me?" Emily's voice cracked. "By hiding an entire life from me? Why didn't you trust me with the truth?" James sighed, running his fingers through his hair as if trying to gather strength. "I made mistakes, big ones. I had a family before we met, a past filled with debts and complicated relationships I thought I could leave behind. But some people never let go. I was trying to keep you safe from those dangers." Emily felt as if the ground beneath her had shifted. The man she thought she knew was tangled in a web of lies, and the betrayal cut deeper than she had ever imagined. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you bring me into this life, knowing it wasn't what it seemed?" James looked away, guilt etched into his features. "Because I wanted a fresh start. I wanted to believe I could be better. I thought I could leave the past behind, but it caught up with me. And now it's putting you in danger too." Emily's heart pounded. Danger? What kind of danger? She looked back at the envelope, at the photos of James with other women, families she had never heard of, lives he had hidden from her. Who are they? Why are they important? James hesitated, then explained in a low voice. "Those are people from my past, women and children I left behind. I tried to make amends quietly, but some of them wanted more than just forgiveness. Some wanted money, some wanted revenge." The room felt colder. Emily struggled to process everything. She had married a man with a complicated history, a past that could shatter everything they were building. But despite the betrayal, a part of her still wanted to believe in the man who had smiled at her down the aisle. "Is there more?" she asked cautiously. James nodded slowly. "Yes. I've also been dealing with threats, letters, calls. That's why I've been distant. I didn't want to drag you into it, but it's getting worse." Emily's eyes widened. "Threats? From who?" James shook his head. "I don't know exactly. Some people from my past, people who want to control me or take what they think is owed." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but she wiped them away stubbornly. "Why didn't you tell me any of this before?" "I was ashamed," James admitted. "I didn't want to lose you." For a moment, the two sat in silence, the truth hanging between them like a fragile thread. Emily realized their marriage was built on a foundation far more fragile than she had ever imagined. Suddenly, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, a message from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." Fear tightened around her chest. This was no longer just James' secret. Now, Emily was in the crosshairs. Her thoughts raced. She could no longer pretend everything was normal. The woman who had once dreamed of a peaceful second chance was now caught in a dangerous game she didn't understand. Determined to protect herself and find the truth, Emily took a deep breath. She had to be strong, even if it meant facing a reality darker than she had ever expected. She looked at James, searching his face for answers, for reassurance, for any sign that this nightmare could still have an ending she could live with. James reached out, gently taking her hand. "We'll get through this," he said quietly. "Together." But Emily wasn't sure if together was still possible. Emily barely slept that night. The message lingered in her mind like a dark cloud, and every noise in the house made her jump. James sat beside her, but the space between them felt vast, filled with secrets and fears neither dared to voice. She wanted to trust him, but the weight of his hidden past and the threats now haunting them made it impossible. The next morning, Emily decided to take control. She couldn't stay passive while their lives unraveled. With determination burning in her chest, she called Alexander, the billionaire who had warned her. Their conversation was brief, but Alexander promised to help. He explained he had connections in security and private investigation, and he would send someone discreetly to look into James' past and the threats they faced. Emily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she wasn't alone in this fight after all. As days passed, strange things began to happen. Unmarked cars appeared near their home. Unknown numbers called but went silent when she answered. Emily's anxiety deepened, but she refused to let fear control her. She spent hours going over the envelope's contents again, trying to piece together James' past and the web of people entangled with him. One evening, she found a letter hidden inside a book James often read. The paper was worn and the handwriting hurried, but the message was clear. You can't run forever. We're watching. Give what you owe, or everything will fall apart. Emily's hands trembled as she read the words. The danger was closer than she had thought. James' secrets weren't just memories. They were a threat that could destroy her new life. She confronted James again, her voice steady despite the storm inside. Who's after you? What do they want? James looked exhausted, the lines on his face deepening. It's complicated. A business deal gone wrong years ago, people I owe money to, and a few who never forgot the past. I thought it was over, but clearly it's not. Emily felt anger rising. Why didn't you tell me? I needed to know the truth. James reached for her hand, but Emily pulled away. I can't keep living in the dark. If we're going to survive this, I need to know everything. Reluctantly, James began to reveal pieces of his life he had hidden for so long. The debts, the threats, the women and children he had left behind. Not out of cruelty, but because he wanted to protect them from a dangerous world. The truth was messy, painful, and far from the fairy tale Emily had dreamed of, but it was real. As the days went on, Emily found strength she didn't know she had. She started working with Alexander's team, helping gather information and watching for signs of danger. The woman who had once been swept up in a romantic dream was now a fighter, determined to protect herself and those she cared about. One afternoon, Alexander called with news. His investigators had uncovered a name tied to the threats, a man with a reputation for ruthless tactics and a grudge against James. It was the breakthrough Emily had hoped for. But with answers came more questions. How deep did this grudge go? And what would it mean for her and James moving forward? Emily stared out the window, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle over her once again. She had married the wrong man, perhaps. But now she had a choice. Run from the danger or face it head-on, no matter the cost. Her heart ached with the truth, but her resolve was stronger than ever. She would fight for her life, for her future, and maybe for love that could survive even the darkest secrets. Emily sat in the quiet of her living room, the soft hum of the city outside a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. The revelation from Alexander's team had shaken her. This wasn't just some random threat. It was personal, targeted, and dangerously close. The name they uncovered was one she hadn't heard before, but the gravity of it pressed down on her like a heavy weight. James sat beside her, quieter now, stripped of his usual defenses. His name is Victor Caro. He's ruthless, and he doesn't forgive debts easily, James said, voice low and grim. Years ago, I crossed him in a deal that went wrong. I thought I'd paid my dues, but apparently, that's not the case. Emily's heart pounded. The man who had haunted James' past was now lurking in the shadows of their present. What does he want from us now? She asked. Control, power, revenge. He wants to remind me that I'm still under his thumb, James said, his eyes dark with regret. And now that you're involved, the stakes are even higher. Emily swallowed hard. The fear was real, but so was the resolve growing inside her. She wasn't about to back down. Not now. Alexander's team had arranged for increased security around their home, and Emily was learning to live with the constant presence of strangers watching from a distance. It was unsettling but necessary. Every day felt like walking a tightrope, balancing hope and fear. One evening, as Emily prepared dinner, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. Stop asking questions. Leave the past buried, or there will be consequences. Her hand shook, the message burning into her mind. She showed it to James, who clenched his jaw. We can't ignore this. Emily looked at him, searching for the man she married, the man who promised her a future. Despite everything, she saw the same spark of determination in his eyes. They were fighting the same battle, tangled in a web of danger and deceit. Over the next few days, Emily and James worked closely with Alexander's investigators, uncovering more about Victor Caro operations and his network. They discovered that Victor's reach extended far beyond what James had admitted. His influence touched business, politics, even law enforcement. The danger was bigger than they thought. One afternoon, Emily received a call from an unknown woman. Her voice was cautious but urgent. Emily, I know what James did. I'm not his enemy. But if you want to stay safe, you need to listen to me. Emily's curiosity and caution warred inside her. Who is this? She demanded. The woman hesitated. Someone who knows the truth. James wasn't always the man he appears to be, but he's trying to make things right. Victor Caro is more dangerous than you realize. Don't trust anyone blindly. The line went dead before Emily could ask more. The warning left her unsettled but oddly relieved. She wasn't alone. That night, as Emily lay awake, she thought about all the secrets, lies, and betrayals. She thought about the woman on the phone, about Alexander's help, about James' guilt and determination. She realized that survival meant more than uncovering the truth. It meant learning who to trust. And in that moment, Emily made a decision. She wouldn't run from the darkness. She would face it, armed with knowledge, courage, and the unyielding desire to protect what she still held dear. Because sometimes love isn't about perfect beginnings. It's about fighting for a future, no matter the cost. Emily woke to a sharp knock on the door. Her heart jumped. These weren't ordinary days anymore. She glanced at James, who was already alert, eyes narrowing. They moved cautiously to the door. Outside stood a man in a suit, but his eyes held something different, urgency, maybe even desperation. I'm here to help, he said quietly. My name is Marcus. I've been tracking Victor Caro for years. I know what he's capable of, and I know how dangerous this has become for you both. Emily didn't know whether to trust him, but something about Marcus's calm confidence made her listen. Marcus laid out a plan. Victor wasn't just a shadow in their lives. He was a force ready to strike, and if Emily and James weren't careful, the consequences could be devastating. We need to get ahead of him, Marcus said. Information is power, and timing is everything. Over the next days, Marcus worked closely with Alexander's team, pooling resources and contacts. Emily found herself learning things she never imagined. Secret meetings, hidden accounts, and coded messages. Every discovery was another piece in a puzzle that painted a picture darker than she had feared. One night, Emily overheard a conversation between Marcus and James. Marcus spoke quietly. Victor's getting impatient. He knows we're closing in. He might make a move soon. James nodded grimly. We have to be ready. I never wanted you involved like this, Emily. I'm already in, she said firmly. I'm not walking away. That same night, Emily felt the weight of the past and future pressing down. Her life had shifted from the predictable to the perilous, and yet, in the midst of uncertainty, she found a strange strength. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a fighter. Days later, a break came. One of the investigators discovered that Victor planned to attend an exclusive gala, the perfect place to confront him, gather evidence, and possibly end the nightmare. The plan was risky, but it was their best shot. Emily volunteered to go. She had to face Victor, to look him in the eye and demand answers. The night of the gala arrived. Emily wore her confidence like armor as she stepped into the grand ballroom. The chandeliers sparkled, and the crowd buzzed with chatter, unaware of the tension simmering beneath the surface. She scanned the room until her eyes locked on Victor. He was exactly as Marcus had described, cold, calculating, with a presence that made the air itself feel heavier. Victor noticed her immediately, a slow, cruel smile spreading across his face. Emily took a deep breath and approached him. "Victor Caro," she said clearly, "your threats end tonight." Victor laughed, a chilling sound. "Do you really think you can stop me, Emily? Your husband owes me everything. And you? You're just a pawn." Emily didn't back down. No more hiding. No more lies. The confrontation was electric, drawing attention from nearby guests. But before things escalated, Marcus and Alexander's team stepped in, armed with evidence and backup. Victor realized the game had changed. Emily watched as Victor was cornered, his expression darkening. The fight wasn't over, but the balance of power was shifting. As the night ended, Emily felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. She had stepped into the darkness and refused to be consumed. The truth had been revealed, and though scars remained, she was no longer alone. James took her hand, his grip steady and sincere. "Thank you for fighting with me." Emily smiled softly. "We're stronger than we think when we face the truth together." For the first time in months, hope flickered in the shadows. The aftermath of the gala left Emily feeling drained but strangely hopeful. Victor Caro had been exposed, his network beginning to crumble under the weight of the evidence Alexander and Marcus had gathered. Yet Emily knew this was only the beginning of a long road to safety and peace. Days turned into weeks, and the pressure slowly eased. The threats became less frequent, and the shadows that once seemed to follow Emily and James started to fade. Alexander's team continued to monitor the situation, providing a shield of protection they desperately needed. Emily and James began to rebuild what had almost been destroyed, their trust, their bond, their future. But the journey wasn't easy. Every glance carried the memory of betrayal. Every silence hinted at unresolved fears. Yet, amid the cracks, they found strength in honesty. James became more open, sharing the painful parts of his past he had long buried. Emily listened without judgment, understanding that love wasn't about perfection, but about acceptance and courage. She saw the man he was trying to be, not just the man he had been. One evening, as they sat together on their porch, the world quiet around them, Emily felt a shift inside. The nightmare was no longer controlling her. She had faced the worst, and she was still standing. With James by her side, flawed but genuine, she dared to hope again. Suddenly, a knock echoed at the door. Emily's heart quickened, but this time it wasn't fear. It was curiosity mixed with a cautious optimism. She opened the door to find Alexander standing there, a rare smile softening his usually serious face. "I thought you might want to know," he said, holding out a folder. Inside was news that Victor Caro had been arrested abroad, his empire dismantled by law enforcement thanks to their evidence. Emily's relief was palpable. Finally, the nightmare was ending. She looked at James, who smiled back, a quiet promise in his eyes. They had married the wrong man, or so it seemed at first. But the truth had changed everything. The man who had hidden secrets was also the man fighting to make things right. And Emily realized that love, real love, wasn't about a perfect past. It was about forgiveness, resilience, and the courage to face the future together. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over their home, Emily and James sat side by side, ready to write a new chapter, one built on truth, trust, and the unbreakable bond they had forged in the fire of their shared trials. The past was behind them. The future was theirs to create. And for the first time in a long time, Emily felt free.